welcome to what I think is one of the most relevant conversations in marketing and customer experience today. We are talking about personalization in India at scale. Because India is not one consumer, right? It's different regions, different languages, multiple behavior pattern, digital maturity, and increasing expectations as well. And now, who better to have this panel on board that covers almost every industry that we have? So I will begin with a common question for all of you. When we say personalization at scale in India today, what does it actually mean in your particular business? And where do you think most brands are still getting it wrong? We'll start with you, Nisha.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So the common problem across brands we see, and of course, initially when I was working with Libas, we also figured out was that the idea of personalization is that to the extent of that, okay, you're sending like a personalized, push notification with the customer's name integrated on it. But that's not it, right? Especially for a category like fashion, where it means a lot more in terms of how are you tracking your customers, who your customer really is. So for us at Libas, how we try to look at it is that we are also trying to decode the customer interaction across moments, understanding context really. It would like shopping is a different journey across different customers, across different cohorts. For somebody who's living in Lucknow, maybe shopping for festive would mean separate situation. For somebody who's working in Delhi and Bangalore, shopping for workwear needs a separate requirement. So they are shopping differently across week, differently across, what are the season of that city, differently across what is the utility for them. The common problem I see brands making is that the hyper personalization in terms of hyper conversion. If I've seen a kurta, let's say online, and I've seen it once, I don't need the brand to be stalking me digitally for next 14 days. In terms of, okay, this is what you've seen, checking and pursuing every click. What we really also need to focus on is that are we only giving the customer what they have previously shopped, then how are we building desirability as a brand? Especially in fashion, which is not really always utility focused, but also aspiration focused. So focusing across affinities, shopping across, what is the need of the consumer in that particular moment is where I think personalization needs to be built up.
Perfect. Mr. Sahai.
Yeah, so I think when you think about personalization, you start thinking about messaging and you start thinking about marketing. But in our case, especially since I'm representing a product company here, right? So for us, it's actually how the product adapts to you. Now, in Logitech, one of our founding principles is people think of Logitech, they think of hardware. But actually, we call it software-enabled hardware. So what that means is that as far as the consumer is concerned, you can actually adopt that software plus hardware experience to how you create stuff, how you play, right, or how you work. Now, just to give you an example, you could have somebody who's a coder by day, right, who is essentially using a lot of heavy Excel sheeting plus, different, let's say, programming languages. But that same person is actually a gamer by night. Now, and they would, for example, be using that same mouse, which would work differently in the context that they are in the day, and they can program that mouse to work differently. And when they are gaming, for example, then they can program that mouse to work differently. So that's something where, we've introduced different, I would say, softwares which actually adapt to the environment and which a user can customize. So for us, what's important is actually this hyper-personalization actually begins in terms of how the product really adapts to you as a user. And it is not really so much as a demographic, right? So it's more of who you are in terms of the persona at that point of time.
Perfect. And Mr. Mukherjee.
I think I agree with Nisha that, stocking, that thing becomes too much when brands start hypnotizing. And for example, in the cinema industry, it's very difficult to personalize because I watch, it's not that it's one size fits all. Every person has a different choice. I might love action movies, but I watch rom-coms as well. So keep the personalization, so that is the reason we have to be personalized on particular specific. on their food habits probably, what they like. If I'm going to cinema probably 10 times in a month, what are my habits, which cinemas I go to, what genre I like, maybe create a journey like that, but do not hyper-personalize. That's what I would say for brands, because then it becomes irritating. Then you tend to lose a customer in that way.
Mr. Shetty.
Good afternoon. Uh, so I come with a unique perspective here because at my role at Branch, I get to work with marketeers from leading brands in India. And talking about personalization at scale, and scale means very different in India. I mean, it's not just a scale in terms of volume, it's structural diversity right there. You have tier 1 cities are very different than tier 2. You have different languages. So there's a lot of scope for personalization, but it's also important to note that there's also a lot of scope to get things wrong when there's so much of moving parts around. So for me, more than personalization, yes, personalization is important, but what is also important is the journey that comes after that personalization. A billion people will also mean that 100 million different kind of journeys, and it is important that we make sure that we have a seamless experience for the end users between all of these journeys in the personalized manner.
Ms. Bhavna.
Thank you for having me. I come from hospitality, so for us, personalization is something that is in our DNA from the day we start our careers. Guest experience is everything for us. But what I feel is important is we should not confuse personalization with targeting. With digital marketing at play, personalization should make a few guest moments, critical guest moments, extremely seamless than overcomplicating the entire journey of guest booking, searching, and actually coming to the hotel. So if I have to look at it from the format of scale, India is no more a mini metro or a metro. We have cultural diversity, we have layers of travelers who come. So for everybody, a few touch points like the check-in experience, what they see digitally is translating on ground. These are very basic needs of a traveler, and to get that right is something very, very critical for us. And personalization should not be confused with targeting is what I would say. Thanks.
Bhavna, hospitality has always been personal at its core, but today with OTAs as well as third-party platforms owning a large part of the journey, where do you think that personalization still feels genuinely human versus how it's becoming overly system-driven?
With OTA coming into picture, guests are getting more options to look for hotels where they're going. But the personalization or the OTA or the AI is never going to replace the human effort that goes into making a journey or a traveler's stay at a hotel seamless. Identifying what they need and preempt is something that is only can be handled by the hospitality personnel at the hotel, not the OTAs. OTAs is a great platform to find, discover the options that you have. But in the long run, it's the product that the hospitality people and the operators sell. OTAs don't sell real estate or hotels per se. It is a discovery place, not a place to experience what hospitality or a hotel is.
What's interesting is hospitality and cinema. Both are very experience operated, experience driven, experience led. So, Indranil, my question to you is, how do you approach personalization in a space where the experience is collective rather than entirely individual?
Very good question. So in India, cinema is still considered a family kind of, people go out, let's go for a movie for the family. Now let's say a family of 4 comes in, the grandfather, father, mother, and the children. Who will you personalize? My question. It's a togetherness thing altogether. So the elderly people is looking for, let's say, assistance. Parents are looking for convenience. The kid is looking for food experience, right? So it's a togetherness. What I feel is that personalization should break the frictions. It should not break the togetherness. So cinema as a collective, So what we always say is that bring in personalization where it gives convenience to the guests. Give them what they want. Guests don't want the world. They're looking for what I want, I get it, I'm happy. If there's something broken, that means there's escalation there itself. So in that case, always keep the personalization to a level that the togetherness is maintained, break the frictions, make the journey as seamless as possible for our patrons. That's what we look at. And imagining the scale of PVR that we had last year, we had 15.7 crore people visiting us in 1 year. So that's the kind of footfall we handle. So you can imagine that the personalization for togetherness, it's massive for us.
Perfect. And coming to you, Mr. Sahai, you come from an industry, your category is so interesting because consumers don't interact with it on a regular basis, right? But how does meaningful personalization work in your category, and how do you avoid, over engaging with the consumers in categories where the purchase cycle is relatively low frequently?
Okay, so our category, I mean, I'm going to take a sort of leaf out of what Indranil said, right? So, because for them, the experience starts once the movie starts, right? So similarly for us, the personalization doesn't happen when you buy the mouse, right? When you buy the product, you buy it once, but you use it every day. When you use it every day, and average human being sitting in this room probably use it 4 or 5 hours a day, right? So personalization begins from there. Now, of course, like, going back to my first answer when I said that, software-enabled hardware. So we've actually built mice which have, the software built in, which you can plug in and play. And once you have that, for example, our top-of-the-range MX Master Mouse, that actually adapts to the environment you operate in. So if you're a designer, you're operating in Figma, you can actually program shortcuts onto your mouse's buttons. And when you move to another environment, which is not Figma, let's say you move to Excel, then those same buttons will actually work differently in the Excel environment basis the personalization that you put into that, right? And if, for example, you use, like typically for people like me, if I use Excel very often, the Control-C, Control-V, etc. is something that you do so often, you can actually program it, and you don't really need to have 4 or 5 keystrokes, right? So to make that work. Specifically, for example, gaming is another category which is, enormously engaging, right? And what happens with a gamer is that they want to personalize the mouse to their style of play. And if they are playing, for example, a first-person shooter game like a Valorant, right? So they want speed, they also want accuracy, so they can actually design the sensitivity of the mouse to actually follow that, right? They can tune the sound that they want basis that. They can tune the response to it, right? So eventually, this mouse becomes yours, right? It's different from any other person's mouse. So, so when it comes to personalization, I think, and in a category which is in a way low frequency, right? So we are low frequency in terms of the way you buy us, but we are very high, personalization in terms of the way that you use the product. So that's what I would say to the question you asked. I think you asked another question in between, which was, how do we avoid over-engagement? Exactly. So, so for us, I think what's important is that, we want to be where the user is curious at, right? If they're already curious about the category, that's where we want to be. If we don't want to shout out loud where you're not curious. Yeah, so very simply put. So we, for example, work with, so there's a software developers conference. People who work on, let's say, Apple Swift, they come to that conference. We talk to them there. So for them, context is everything that matters. So we talk to them specifically in that environment so that they are able to then relate what we are talking about to the work that they do. So it becomes far more contextual. We're not really sort of, shouting at them about why it is important that they should use an MX Mice. They see it in their environment, it comes through immediately. We go to engineering colleges and, these guys are working on software problems which are hackathons. Now, time is of the essence, right? So when they actually engage with some of our products, they're actually able to understand that, okay, how can they save time? How can they actually make their workflow so seamless that it feels like an extension of their own self, right? So, so our approach is, just be where the consumer is, where they already are, talk to them there, whether it's gamers who come at Comic-Cons or they come at eSport festivals, we engage with them there. They get to see, because ours is an experiential product. It is not something that you can just, put up there and get people to engage with it. So that's how we, prevent over engagement, but still, be there where the user wants us to be.
Perfect, perfect. And Nisha, coming to fashion, it is one industry which sees the fastest discovery and the fastest conversion rate. But fashion is also very deeply personal, right? So how do you balance scale and trend-driven behavior with individual taste? Like, do you think algorithm-led personalization sometimes limits the discovery?
No, so two questions, right? So fashion is actually the hardest category to personalize because fashion is emotional. It's not logical. Like while women know what they buy, they also want to be surprised with what else they can buy. Let's say I do buy one kurta, one safe black kurta for my workwear needs, but I wouldn't want the brand to limit there, right? So as marketers, our jobs becomes particularly a little bit more challenging when it comes to fashion because while of course I want to show the consumer that, hey, this is what you previously liked, but I also equally have to engage with the consumer in terms of, okay, you may also like this from a POV of like, this is what the brand's aspiration is. Consumer can come to you once with, highly optimized funnel with, let's say, purchase once with you, but it will not come again with you if you're not building aspiration. So that is where the work of marketing comes, and that is where we also try to, work with creator ecosystems, the brand philosophy, or a styling philosophy, because this will compound over time, but the consumer will come back because they see you as a brand who is in line with their utility, in line with who she wants to be. That is why you also see like so many brands working on communities now. That is why it is again at the same point of time when AI is so relevant, communities are also so relevant. After a couple of years, every brand will become extremely efficient with AI. So the differentiating factor would be a brand who knows the consumer well. Like Manoj just said, that context is very important. So it is for us, and I think so it is for every brand. Like where are you targeting the consumer really, across what moments of their life is what matters. Your second question was, do I think that discovery will dilute after algorithm? Absolutely, of course it will. If see, consumer is not going to remember the brand who targeted them the highest or the strongest. That's not how consumers remember brands, right? Of course, data can tell us what consumers buy, but it is through emotional intelligence and marketing intelligence that you figure out why they buy what they buy. So you have to take in that information and then double down in terms of like, okay, how can you meet them there again and again?
Perfect. And coming to you, Mr. Shetty, from a customer experience perspective across mobile apps, how do you help brands translate personalization into something that actually builds trust rather than just driving engagement?
So from a customer experience perspective, personalization it shouldn't be something where you're reading the search history back to them, right? That's something doesn't look like personalization rather than intrusion. Personalization is when we get out of the way from the customer. They've come there with an intent. How can you get to that intent with a shorter number of steps is what, less friction, exactly. That is what matters. So creating user journeys where intuitively getting them to what they want to achieve is what is important for us. But at the same time, we also tend to make mistakes in terms of customer experience wherein the signals might be wrong. Somebody might stay on a page for a long time. We might think that's an engaged user, but in reality, they might be confused on where to click, where to go next. So these broken experiences have a larger impact than the right ones. So it's important to look at broken experiences along with looking at how can I give a wow experience for my customers.
And in your opinion, where do you see the biggest gaps between what data suggests and what customers actually experience?
Data only tells you what happened, it doesn't tell you why. And that is where the human factor, that is where additional work is needed to find out and insights from the data, get insights from that data to understand what is happening. So one example that I just gave you is when the signals are confusing. Somebody spending time on a page can be read as engaged versus being confused. So this is relying too much on data is where companies get things wrong. For example, you would have seen companies try to get targeted ads wherein you have tried to purchase, let's say, a television, and you continuously get those television pop-ups or push notification ads around you. What we miss is they might have already made a purchase. they're not going to buy a TV again for the next, at least for a few years. So that becomes intrusion for them. Oh, I bought one TV and now I keep getting ads over here. So having complete data on the journey wherein they have tried to look for this product, but they've finished a purchase event. So then let's focus on something else. Maybe I can sell them a cover for their remote rather than pushing TV ads again.
Okay, so let me open this up to everyone on the panel. So we do talk about personalization, but there's also a little bit about the omni-channel experience. And in my opinion, I feel most consumers still experience the brands in silos and not as a complete whole. So where do you think omni-channel journeys still break most often today? Let's start with you, Mr. Mukherjee.
Honestly, I think in the omnichannel experience breaks where you have a phygital connect. For example, for cinemas, our booking journey is digital, primarily. I mean, if I ask these people in the room, how many of them Durandar? Let's show of hands. Most of them would have done the booking digitally. Seamless journey, let's say. But if you come to the movie hall, if something breaks there in the handover, that is where you miss the omnichannel experience here. It can be across channels as well. Let's say I'm in CX. So one customer books a ticket digitally, then calls up your contact center for some issue, goes via voice, channel, email, everywhere it gets a different experience. The data is not seamless. We don't have the customer persona probably correct there. That is one point. Two, where it breaks is the physical and digital handover. I'll give you a classic example. I come from airlines. So in Indigo also you book the ticket digitally, but you fly physically. Same for cinemas. I book the ticket seamlessly. I book my popcorn, Pepsi online. And I go to the cinema, I expect the food to come to me automatically. But somewhere in the journey is broken. The order did not flow to the cinema. They did not know the customer had booked the order. There is where the experience breaks everywhere. So if you stitch every point, omni-channel, across your touch points, everywhere the handover from one touch point to another, that this customer has booked, he's booked tickets, he's booked food, you have to take care of it once he's at the cinema. That entire 360-degree experience, data sharing and handover and touch points is the most critical point.
Do you feel in the cinema experience, customers do actually actively ask for hyper-personalization?
In cinemas, let's say again I said it's a family, right? So in a cinema, hi Indranil, how are you? Personalization, rather than saying, oh Mr. Mukherjee, we know your journey. You know, you prefer to come on Fridays or Saturdays with your family and you book this and this. You come with your daughter. This is the kind of personalization I would personally prefer, right? So a simple hyper-personalization to a one-to-one point, to an overall persona over the family togetherness of the customer, his journey is what works in cinemas better.
Perfect. Bhavna, coming to you, same question. Where do you think that omni-channel journeys still break most often today?
So for us in hotels, the whole disconnect between when you buy the hotel room from an OTA, you have a conversation. Let's say you need a late checkout, maybe an early check-in in a hotel that you have just booked. You have a conversation at the OTA platform with the representative there or the bot over there about your requirements. Then you say, okay, I am allergic to gluten, I'm allergic to XYZ. All that conversation never comes to the hotel. It doesn't transfer into the property management system, which we call as PMS. So that is where we have a huge failure in terms of how omni-channel is not translating into the actual guest experience. While there's a lot of conversation happening with the people who are actually not owning the hotel or managing the hotel or taking care of any part of your stay, they are just a booking engine. A lot of your experience is shared there of your expectation when you come to the hotel. So I think that is where omni-channel for us hoteliers breaks a lot. And then when the customer comes from all the guests come from very, very fragmented backgrounds. Some come for hitchhiking, some are for business purpose, some are on leisure. When they might have searched 5 OTAs and then they would have come or maybe booked on a WhatsApp, but they expect the hoteliers like us to address them with their first name. So it becomes the whole journey becomes very, very different for the guest when they actually arrive versus when they were about to book or they have already booked. So that is where for hospitality omnichannel fails a
I'll
bit.
just add on to it because hospitality is the same. So, in a customer might not remember seamless 10 booking journeys, but one experience at the hotel or the cinema, which changes his life, he'll remember it all his life. So it's the emotions which bring back the customer, right? So that's the reason it's very important that that entire data sharing between the channels is seamless again.
Coming to Mr. Shetty.
So, I mean, this is very close to me mainly because this is the exact problem that we at Brand solve. Having, so as a pioneers of deep linking, what we do sometimes is for our customers everywhere, not just in India, we have an adoption score. Our highly adopted customers are who are the ones who get this right. How can you make sure that there's an omni-channel experience between your web versus your app? How can there be same experience between even a physical store? How can you leverage the strength of, let's say, a QR code or even an RFID to collect information of that user, identify that user, even if they come to a brick and mortar store, we should be able to identify that user and give that kind of personalization. It's only possible if you can adopt, let's say, for example, and sorry for the plug here, if you're using a branch link everywhere, in your QR code in your offline store, in your web, as well as your app, we are able to give that experience because you are able to identify that user coming in all of these channels.
And Mrs. Sahai, from Logitech's point of view, how would you say where does the omni-channel journey break?
I think, as I said earlier, our product is experiential, right? So, and for us, actually, there's a lot of, how would we say, in the purchase journey, online to offline or offline to online, O2O exists either ways. So, where it breaks down essentially is, for example, if you're running a campaign which is talking about, for example, the G29 racing wheel, right? So that racing wheel essentially gives you an experience of participating in a Formula One, sitting in your home, and you can actually it's a truly immersive experience, right? Now you get curious about it, then you walk into a offline store and. Ideally, we obviously give links to which these offline stores would be. But if you walk into an offline store and the G29 isn't there, it's not on display, or this particular setup isn't there, then obviously it gets broken, right? So for us, what is important is that when we run campaigns, we actually link through the entire physical plus digital experience into one seamless whole, so that a hackathon participant, when they actually touch and feel the MX, they then go on to decide that, okay, I want to buy this, but maybe I don't want to buy it right now because it's 13,000 bucks. So I'm going to think about it and potentially buy it maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. So they also get a code for Amazon. They put it on Amazon, they get it, and they are able to purchase at a discount 3 weeks later, because Amazon also tells us, look, people contemplating an MX make it sit in their buy basket for almost 60 days, right, before they decide. So as far as we are concerned, I think what is important for us is to stitch those experiences together with that particular thought in mind. If we don't, then it breaks. Because then, the gamer or the creator wants to experience this product also. They don't find it in store, they don't find it in Chroma, they don't find it in a particular, let's say, offline store. They can't experience it, they just will not go by the reviews.
100%. And Nisha, coming to the fashion side of it, how would you say that the omni-channel journey breaks?
So for us, the case is much more curious, right? Because we are an online-first brand. So if a consumer moves into the store, they end up saying that, okay, we are getting this particular product at a certain ASP, at a marketplace, or at your own D2C, right? So how do you kind of weaken and strengthen the relationship with the consumer then? Because that is the truth sometimes, due to multiple reasons like rebates, etc. at marketplaces. While of course most of the inventory we do try to match the price point, but in those particular cases, you need to highlight to the consumer what is the USP of the physical store they are walking in. What are the other collections and garments they can get for their other needs across. Also the customer and the salesperson relationship, right? Most of the times we actually do end up guiding the consumer to download the app and shop that piece if they really want to buy that piece at that discounted price. So I think what Bhavna really rightly pointed out, that your AI will be there to make the systems more efficient, but it is that human interaction, especially if you operate in an ecosystem where you're privileged to have an omni-channel presence. I think that human interaction actually adds up a lot more than we estimated to.
Perfect. And to wrap up the panel, I have a quick question for all of you. One thing that you feel that the brands need to stop doing in the name of personalization, and one thing they absolutely need to start doing over the next few years. We'll start with you, Nisha.
I think what we need to stop doing is considering that India, assuming that India is one digital consumer. India is actually different internets simultaneously existing, so that differs across their shopping patterns. People have modesty preferences, people have weather preferences, people have aspirational preferences. So considering that in mind, sorry, what was your second question?
One thing that they need to stop doing and one thing that they need to start doing in the
I
next
think what they need to start doing is like really going super aggressive towards short-term attributions. Like I said, that no consumer remembers a brand by how hard they were targeted by. But actually remember that all of these campaigns, maybe it is a big campaign or a big celebrity association or a brand world narrative, all of this compounds over time. Consumer, when they are trying, especially in the case of fashion, they preference gets built first, then purchase. So that needs to be kept in mind.
Perfect. Mrs. Sahai.
So I think one thing that brands need to really stop doing is, stop treating personalization as a volume game, because what happens today is that you've got messages and the message can be 1,000 different iterations of it on AI can make it happen, right? But if it is not relevant and if it is not authentic, it's not going to connect. So that's one thing I think definitely brands need to stop doing. As far as start, I would say, truly build trust, right? Build consent, right? Build personalization in that sense with consent. Specifically when it comes to our category, I would say a brand where users need to adapt to the technology is not going to be the winner. The winner is where, the technology actually seamlessly adapts to the user, right? That brand will be the winner for it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Mr. Mukherjee.
I think I'll just go ahead with what Devi said. Stop intruding. Intrusion is something which I don't want to see the same thing on Amazon, Google, WhatsApp, Facebook, everywhere. Stop intruding, be less intrusive, and what they need to start to do again is what he said, check the journey. If I bought a car, if I completed my purchase, stop targeting. It's the entire journey, that's what irritates a customer. That I bought it 3 months back, I'm still getting pop-ups for a TV or something. I sold off my car 3 months back, I'm still getting, new price available for your car, please sell it. So that's into what? Stop intrusion and clean up the journey.
Perfect. Mr. Shetty.
Yeah, I mean, in similar lines, right? Stop focusing or indexing too much on past history. When a customer, what do you want to do today should be the question. What is their intent today? And there are a lot of other signals other than past purchases that can tell you that story of what they want to do today and focus on that more than only over-indexing on past purchases.
Perfect. Bhavna.
I will speak specific to the hospitality, and what we need to stop doing is over personalization. That is something that just comes with hospitality, I guess. But when everything is personalized, nothing remains personal. That's something I truly believe in. You have to give the guests their space to breathe, to experience your hotel, to experience the services. If you keep on messaging them or over communicate with them, that whole personalization just becomes an unpleasant experience. What we need to start doing is we need to use the data to understand better the operational way of handling a guest. Not forgetting that hospitality is all about understanding the guest need at that point of time. Don't upsell them ridiculous offers of spa when the guest has come for one night on a business trip. He has no time. You're just wasting your time and his. So we need to start, we need to rely on the data, but don't make data written on a stone rule. It's not an SOP. All of us who work in hospitality, a large part of our day goes by in, working on our hunches that maybe, this guest is feeling tired, or maybe he's not well, or maybe can I offer him something light? So these things AI can't help me. I have to preempt it. I just have to be a human being, not an AI for a change in this industry, to just understand what another person in my hotel needs. So we need to go back to, old school hospitality here, which was relationship based, where our fathers or their fathers used to book hotels, call somebody, book a hotel, had a wonderful stay, no OTAs. So I think hospitality needs to take a step back when it comes to personalization and go back to old school way of hospitality. That's what I would want to say.
Perfect. I love the fact when you said that when everything gets personalized, nothing stays personal. And I think that concludes the panel very well because nowadays the marketing angle is it's very common that it's no longer like a marketing capability. It's a trust capability. And where there's trust, the marketing works. So I'll just quickly open for one audience question. Can we have one question?
We've been talking about B2C, but in the B2B space, how does personalization make a difference or a game changer? For example, every 100 kilometers in India, there's a different language, right? And if I'm Schneider Electric and I'm trying to sell inverters to dealers, how does personalization help me?
You can answer that from your perspective.
Yeah, so in Logitech, for example, everybody knows us for mice and webcams and keyboards and everything, but people don't know that we are also a unified communication and collaboration company and video conferencing company, right? So in fact, we launched very late into the market. So HP, Poly have always held a lead there, but we are now pretty strong competitor in that space. And the way we've actually made things better is that we used what we know in the consumer space, in the Logitech for Business space, as we call it. The way it worked for us is that, imagine a meeting, right? So typically in a meeting, in a boardroom, you would have 20 people seated, and usually the people pay most attention to the CEO, right? The person who's sitting there, and he's sitting near the camera, he or she, and the camera's framing them. We've built tech which actually can make every person in the room present to the person who's on the video call at the other space, right? So the moment you speak up, the camera will actually frame you specifically. You can see a view of the room, you can see a view of the speaker, even if you're, hopefully you're not whispering something, bad about the CEO, but if you're saying something, it'll pick it up. So that's the way the entire audio visual tech actually works to make sure that everybody is seen, everybody is heard, and it's not only the most important person in the room, right? And I'll give you a personal example. Before I joined Logi, I was working with a company called Haleon, which is a consumer health company known as GSK earlier. The challenge that we always had, most of you, if you're working in a corporate environment, is that how do I find a room which is free, right? Never able to find a room which is free. Somebody's secchi has blocked the room forever, right? Now, we have a tech which actually makes sure that the moment somebody exits the room and it's empty for 5 minutes, the room will be shown as vacated on the scheduler, okay? You enter the office, you can actually figure out which rooms are free today, so you don't waste time trying to search a room for a meeting. So the point I'm making is this is personalization because it talks to the consumer or the office goer who's in the office to be able to make sure that they are at their best in terms of the productivity, right? So I'm not sure if it answers your question which you asked about Schneider, but yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If I can quickly add to that, the big difference between B2C and B2B comes to personalization. For B2B, it's more of a customer experience tool than an acquisition tool, right? So I think that's the important distinction between those two.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining us today. It was an honest and insightful conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
A warm round of applause.